Hey everybody, Ben here from DMC Films and Cinder Studios, and today we're looking at creating zero-point perspective. Now, a lot of times when learning perspective, you learn 1 point, 2 point, 3 point, some people even learn 4 point. And while all of this is very good, one thing that tends to be overlooked when being taught perspective is zero-point perspective. And it has a few different names, but we're just going to call it 0 point for the sake of this demonstration here. And the thing with the 0 point perspective is when you're looking at landscapes, which is most of what I do, you're looking at something that doesn't always have a clear and focused vanishing point. I mean, you're going to see some things that may have like you might see a road with say like power lines or something coming up or so, and they're all in perspective going down the road. There's the road with the lines going across, but generally speaking, it's not a common thing in landscapes to be working in perspective. So what you're going to find is that you need to create depth without the use of a single vanishing point. So in order to kind of show you guys this properly, I'm going to toss out a couple lines for thumbnails, and we can kind of look at this in a few different ways. Alright, so we'll come up to our first example here. We notice that in standard perspective, when you're looking at a roughly a horizon line and you have a point on it, you're working, say, usually from blocky objects, oftentimes buildings. And you have your lines, and the lines are pointing down in towards that vanishing point, and usually in single point perspective you just have a line sort of parallel to the horizon to create sort of that blocky image. The problem is when you have a tree or some other kind of element, you have a tree that doesn't have these blocky elements to it. You have the square edges, but a tree is just sort of its own element. It doesn't have these edges. So what do you do with it in a landscape scenario? Granted, in single point perspective, you can kind of have these lines of your tree, and you can kind of force yourself into doing it that way, but it oftentimes creates a more limiting environment. So what exactly do I mean by the 0 point perspective? 0 point perspective doesn't go to any particular point on the horizon. It just everything goes parallel to the horizon line. So we drop out another horizon line over here. And in doing something like this, you might think, okay, well, where's my point? The horizon is your entire point. So anything across the back is your smallest point. Both on the top and on the bottom, they're the same size, roughly. And then as you get further away from this center sort of horizon line slash vanishing point, things will start getting a little bigger. And then by the time they reach the edges, they are the biggest object in the scene. Now, in working with landscapes, you also want to make sure the things furthest away are also lighter in color. But granted, that's a tutorial for color and not for shape and size. So how exactly would you apply this into a landscape scenario? Well, if we lay out another line down here, just using this darker one right here, we'll notice that a lot of times, especially in my paintings, everything works in layers. Especially working in acrylics, everything will work in layers. So in the back we'll have, say, a mountain range. And that'll act as sort of our horizon, which isn't necessarily parallel, but you get the idea. And then you'll have just elements of trees, say here, that are kind of cutting across the top. And then sort of in the middle of this, you'll have bigger trees. And then in the front, you'll have the biggest trees. That are stretching all the way across the top. They're hitting the top and the bottom, and here they're hitting sort of in the middle ground, and here they're hitting top and bottom, sort of just parallel on either side of that line. And from that you have depth without any direct perspective. It's just sort of as you're going back to the horizon, things are getting smaller. Now in this section, you notice, you might think, okay, we have, what, 3 layers here? You actually have 4 layers. Your horizon is one of those layers. These trees, first layer of trees we did is 2nd, middle ground, 3, top one, 4. And as many layers as you want to put on, it really creates more and more depth to the piece. I just did 4. I could double this up and make it 8. It really doesn't matter. It's all about how many layers you want to put in and how many sections of the depth that you want to build. So let's take a look at this in a slightly different scenario. Okay, this is a piece that I did early in 2012. And this demonstrates my point very, very well. I'm just going to grab a sort of a different color here. So a horizon in this piece is way up top, and it's also slanted right there. So you're going to have these sort of jagged rocks. And you notice the way this piece is done, these rocks, larger, are closer to the viewer, not just further from the vanishing point. This implies slightly different effects. So you have the main sections of the rocks, which are, decent size, and as we're getting closer to the viewer, we're getting larger. But now you have these rocks up here that are sort of defying this parallel to the parallel line, and they're bigger here than they are probably about here. These are about the same size. So it kind of fools you into thinking, oh, these are the same size, they must be the same distance from me, so these rocks are sort of falling. You also look at a rock down here that's much larger, this structure, and it's about the same size as this one. Again, you see, these sides are closer. This rock must be closer. You're not actually painting them closer to the audience. It's just sort of a perception thing. Let's take a look at another piece. Now, you might remember seeing me do this piece in a few hangouts, a couple of the live shows, and this illustrates the point even better here. The horizon's roughly about here. So, with that element, things are getting bigger as they go further down. In here, you have very large elements. These are complete, all these little dots are pine trees, and as you see, as you get closer to them, they're actually starting to fill out a little bit more. And here, as we're getting even closer, we have small rocks, which, if you look at this rock, and you look at this mountain, they appear to be about the same size. But you know that they're not the same size because of this is being closer to the viewer and this being much further away. Same thing with the clouds. You're looking at a smaller cloud here versus a larger one up here. You may think, oh, this is just a smaller cloud, this is just a larger cloud. But given the concept of where the horizon line is, you're looking at a much larger structure. Let's look at one more example. Now this, if anyone happened to ask, this would be my favorite painting of all time. This painting is called Twilight in the Wilderness by Frederick Edwin Church. This particular piece is hanging in the Cleveland Museum of Art, and if you ever get a chance to go look at it, it is absolutely beautiful. It's actually very big, too. I didn't expect that when I first saw the piece. So, we'll take a look at this example. The horizon is roughly about here. Oh, whoops. I can't even get a straight line here. Okay. And that goes across from the top of those mountains and to where the sun is just peeking under the horizon there. And here we have elements getting larger as they go back. Let's draw this out almost in one-point perspective. Take a look at our lines. Take a look at the elements in the piece. You have trees that you can clearly see as, pretty big pine trees, but these are much smaller than these. You can see them appearing in the piece. Like same thing here, the clouds way up here as they're reaching closer to the viewer. You can see them better. Yeah. And while this doesn't actually have direct one-point perspective, it has the illusion of perspective, given the pieces and the elements in the piece. There is some general vanishing point here, but generally speaking, it is just a general parallel line. Because if you look at, say, a mountain from here and a mountain from here, this one is much closer, this one is much further away. It's much more subtle in this piece, but you still get that idea of perspective without any type of major flaw. Well, that about wraps it up. And remember, for more tips, tutorials, and other art videos, please subscribe. This is Ben. See you guys next time.